Shaquille O'Neal wasn't just known for his legendary basketball career, he was known for his heart. But even for a man of his stature, some moments stood out more than others. One evening, as he casually strolled through a shopping mall, something caught his eye. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, stood frozen outside a shoe store. His small hands were pressed against the glass, his breath fogging up the surface as he stared at a pair of brand new sneakers. His eyes were wide, filled with something between wonder and heartbreak. Beside him, a woman his mother sighed and gently pulled at his sleeve. "Come on, Jordan. Let's go," she murmured. Her voice was soft, kind, but heavy. Shaq watched as the boy hesitated, his gaze lingering on the shoes for just a second longer before finally turning away. That was all it took. Shaq walked toward them, his towering frame casting a long shadow. The boy turned at the movement and nearly stumbled back in shock. "Why, you're Shaq," Jordan gasped, his voice barely above a whisper. Shaq chuckled, kneeling slightly to meet his eye level. "That's what they tell me." "What's your name, little man?" "Jordan," the boy breathed. Shaq grinned. "Jordan, man, that's a champion's name right there. You hope." The boy's excitement dimmed slightly. He glanced down at his worn sneakers, shuffling his feet. "Yeah, but I don't have real basketball shoes." Shaq nodded slowly. "That right. Well, tell me, Jordan, what were you looking at in that window?" Jordan's eyes flickered toward the glass, but he didn't speak. His mother cleared her throat. "It's nothing, Mr. O'Neal. He likes shoes. That's all." Her smile was polite, but Shaq noticed the way she gripped Jordan's shoulder, a protective, almost apologetic touch. Shaq turned back to the boy. "You like those shoes?" Jordan nodded, still hesitant. Shaq smiled. "Then let's go get M." The mother's eyes widened. "Oh, Mr. O'Neal, that's very kind, but we really couldn't." Shaq raised a hand, stopping her gently. "Listen, I've been blessed in my life, and one thing I love, helping out when I can." He glanced at Jordan. "Every great player starts somewhere. How about we start with the right shoes?" Jordan stood frozen, looking between his mom and Shaq. "You serious?" he whispered. Shaq winked. "Dead serious." Jordan's face broke into a wide grin, and before anyone could say anything else, he grabbed Shaq's massive hand, pulling him toward the store. The mother stood still for a moment, then wiped at her eyes before following as they stepped inside. The store buzzed with whispers, customers and employees alike recognizing the larger-than-life figure. But for Shaq, none of that mattered, because at that moment, he wasn't a basketball legend. He was just a man helping a kid chase his dream. As Shaq stepped inside the shoe store, Jordan was practically bouncing with excitement, his small hands gripping Shaq's massive fingers as if afraid this moment would disappear. The store manager, a middle-aged man in a crisp polo shirt, immediately straightened at the sight of the NBA legend. "Mr. O'Neal," he exclaimed, rushing over with a wide grin. "What an honor to have you here. How can we help you today?" Shaq nodded politely and gestured toward Jordan. "This little man right here has an eye for some good kicks. We're gonna get him set up." The manager's smile faltered for a split second as he glanced at Jordan's worn-out sneakers and his mother, who stood hesitantly at the entrance. Of course. Right this way," he said. Regaining his composure, Jordan practically dragged Shaq to the display, pointing at the exact pair he had been admiring. These are the ones." He beamed. The shoes were a limited edition basketball sneaker, sleek and brand new. The price tag alone was enough to make his mother hesitate near the doorway, her hands gripping her purse out of habit, even though she knew there wasn't enough inside to cover them. Shaq crouched down beside Jordan. "You sure? Champ, you. Like these? Jordan nodded eagerly. Then let's get M in your size. The manager, still looking slightly unsure, signaled a store clerk, who quickly fetched the shoes. As Jordan slid his feet into them, his face lit up. They fit perfect, he said, bouncing on his heels. I feel like I can dunk already. Shaq chuckled. Gotta put in the work. Little man, the shoes help, but the hustle makes the player. Jordan nodded solemnly, as if Shaq had just told him the greatest secret in the universe. Meanwhile, his mother stepped forward, her expression torn between gratitude and discomfort. Mr. O'Neal, I really don't know how to thank you, she said softly. This is more than just a pair of shoes to him. Shaq smiled, his deep voice kind. I know. He turned to the cashier, pulling out his wallet. But before he could even hand over his card, the store manager hesitated again. Sir, he said carefully, lowering his voice. These are limited editions. We have a policy against discounts, or Shaq raised an eyebrow, his towering frame suddenly feeling even larger. The store fell silent. The manager cleared his throat quickly. I mean, of course, you can buy them. No problem. I was just saying. Shaq chuckled, shaking his head. Man, you thought I was asking for a discount. I'm buying M full price. And he glanced down at Jordan, then looked back at the manager. You know what? Let's add a second pair, just in case he needs a backup. Jordan's mouth dropped open. Are you serious? Shaq winked. Dead serious. The cashier hurriedly rang up the shoes, her hands slightly shaking from the excitement of having a superstar in the store. When the receipt printed, Shaq handed the bags to Jordan. You keep working hard, all right, and one day, I want to see you in the NBA. Jordan nodded so fast it looked like his head might fall off. I won't let you down, he promised. As Shaq turned to leave, the entire store, customers, employees, even the hesitant manager erupted into applause. Jordan's mother wiped away a tear, gripping the shoe bag tightly, and as they stepped back into the mall, Jordan turned to look up at Shaq with a big smile. This is the best day of my life. Shaq smiled down at him, then ruffled his hair. Nah, kid, he said, the best day of your life. That's still ahead of you. As Shaq and Jordan stepped out of the store, the young boy couldn't stop staring at his brand new sneakers. He lifted each foot, admiring the way they gleamed under the mall's bright lights. His mother, still holding onto the bag with an expression of disbelief, shook her head and smiled. You really didn't have to do that, she told Shaq, her voice thick with emotion. Shaq simply shrugged, his deep voice calm but firm. I wanted to. They stood there for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling in. The store employees were still buzzing inside, pointing, whispering, and recounting the moment they had just witnessed. Even a few mall-goers had taken notice, snapping pictures from a respectful distance, sharing what they had just seen. Then, a small voice broke the silence. Mr. Shaq? Jordan was looking up at him, still in awe. Why did you do that? I mean, you don't even know me. Shaq knelt down, putting a massive hand on Jordan's shoulder. His voice softened. Because when I was your age, someone did the same thing for me. Jordan blinked, surprised. For real? Shaq nodded. I was a big kid, and I didn't always have the nicest shoes. But one day, a stranger saw me looking at a pair, just like you were today. And you know what he told me? Jordan shook his head. He said, one day, when you can, you do this for someone else. Shaq smiled. And now I can. So I do. Jordan looked down at his shoes, then back up at Shaq. His eyes were filled with something beyond excitement, understanding. I'll do the same, he said quietly. One day, when I can. Shaq grinned. That's the deal, little man. As they said their goodbyes, Jordan and his mother walked away, the young boy practically floating as he took step after step in his new sneakers. Shaq watched them go, arms crossed, a satisfied smile on his face. But what he didn't realize was that the impact of that moment had already begun spreading. A woman who had witnessed the entire event was now buying lunch for the stranger sitting outside the mall. A father, who had been passing by, put his phone away and decided to spend the rest of the day with his son. A store employee who had once believed famous people only cared about themselves now had a different story to tell. It was a ripple effect to an act of kindness setting off a chain reaction. As Shaq turned to leave, a man in a suit approached him, hesitantly. "Excuse me, Mr. O'Neal," he said. "I just wanted to say, that was incredible. You don't see that kind of generosity every day." Shaq chuckled. "You can. Just gotta be the one to start it." The man smiled, nodded, and walked away deep in thought. Shaq pulled out his phone, checking the time. He had places to be, things to do. But at that moment, he knew nothing else mattered more than what had just happened. Because today, he hadn't just bought a pair of shoes. He had planted a seed. And one day, when Jordan grew up, that seed would bloom. The cycle would continue. And that was worth more than all the sneakers in the world.